Greetings, folks. Chris here, the Day-to-Day Apologist. Welcome to History of the Holidays, Christmas, Part 2. Now, this one, we're going to be focusing on the birth of Jesus and how it has become the central point of the holiday season. Now, if you haven't had a chance, make sure you click on the playlist, scroll on down, and you can watch the origins where I talked about winter solstice and how some of it has still, played a small role in how we celebrate Christmas today. Now, in this one, when we talk about the birth of Jesus, the first thing we need to accept is that the early church, we're talking Acts early church, disciple-leading early church, did not celebrate any festivities of Jesus' birth. Now, that's not saying they didn't talk about him, but if they celebrated anything, and was there any early festive celebrations in the early church, it was the death and resurrection of Jesus. They were much more focused on sharing the gospel and getting out to everybody and telling about Jesus and what Jesus said and what Jesus did than they really were about celebrating things. Well, if that's true, Chris, then when did the church, the Christian church, start celebrating Jesus' birth? Well, they did that in around 36 AD in Rome, roughly early 4th century. And they did this, and we know it's recorded, because Pope Julius I is responsible for creating December 25th as being the day that they focused on Jesus' birth. Now, what they pretty much do is celebrate, they eat food and things like that and celebrate together, and they would go to church, and that was pretty much it. Now, Christmas was not called Christmas when it was first created. Pope Julius called it the Feast of the Nativity. Now, it's important to know that the reason why they did this was to absorb their traditions of the Saturnalia festival that the Roman people would celebrate. Remember that I mentioned that festival in my Origins video. And they basically did this so that the people that were, on the fence, that were still kind of practicing pagan culture, would be more open to the idea. Now, it didn't take much convincing because the early church and the church up all the way up to this point had really done a really good job on sharing the gospel message without, becoming authoritarian. And we know this just by the simple facts of history. There's a lot of persecution, and when they were spreading out and sharing the gospel message, a lot of people were like, I really like this idea of a kind and compassionate and caring God. And so we see by Egypt, in 432 AD, Egypt had embraced the Feast of Nativity. In fact, England had embraced this practice by the 6th century, or the end of the 6th century. And by the end of the 8th century, the celebration of Christmas had spread all the way up to Scandinavia. And so it just spread like wildfire, and people were embracing it. They liked the idea, they liked the message, and they liked the idea of God in flesh being compassionate and caring, and also having borders and boundaries and sharing truth. And so by the Middle Ages, Christianity had, for the most part, replaced pagan religion. And it was around this time, however, that we see that Christmas becomes different. By the Middle Ages, believers attended church, yes, but they would do this topsy-turvy kind of celebration, and they would get drunk and, carnival-like atmospheres, and they would do things like pick a beggar or a servant and name them like the Lord of Misrule. And it was just really weird and really backwards. The only positive thing that they were doing was that the lords or the masters would forgive debts or allow servants the freedom to do what they wanted to do during this celebration time. Now, this practice continued either aggressively or conservatively all the way up until the early 17th century, when a gentleman named Oliver Cromwell and his Puritan group became the center of power in England in around 1645. And they looked at England, and England was being very immoral and corrupt, and they said that they were going to rid England of all moral and cultural decline. And so they said in their efforts, Christmas would have to end. Now, this didn't last very long because Charles II regained power, and he quickly put Christmas back then with pretty much when he got the throne again, and people embraced it very quickly. And that pretty much ends the information or this second part, as we are going to about to be entering on Monday the third part, which is how Christmas had impacts in America and how it basically has become what it has today. I hope you enjoyed the videos. Make sure you subscribe, hit that notification button, and I look forward to seeing you all guys on Christmas Eve. Have a great day.